I suppose this is a bit of a selfish question because it's something I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to ask you because you will have some interesting, deep answers to it. Forgiveness in Christianity can be really, really powerful, and I respect anyone that can use that. What are your thoughts on forgiving someone who's done a hideous crime?
Well, this is obviously something that you come across in your profession.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, okay. The best example, I know I keep repeating this, the best example I can give is from the Master, from Jesus, when he was up there on the cross. And I have to tell you that of all the ways to die, crucifixion is the worst. Sometimes it can take 3-4 days to die. When you've got nails been put into your hands and your feet, and the weight of your body is pulling upon those things, the pain is unbearable. You can't get away from it. You can't breathe properly, so you're struggling to breathe. Then you have the sun beating down on your head. It's truly horrible. And the Romans used it for the worst crimes. You know, it was their ultimate punishment. So Jesus is hanging on the cross, and he's about to give up the ghost. And he says, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Now, is that powerful, or is that powerful? I would say that forgiving people, if the crime has been done to you or your family or somebody that you love or respect or what have you, and the crime has been horrific, murder or rape or something like that, it's incredibly hard to forgive it. And my heart goes out to anyone who has been through such an experience. And I think we all have to have understanding and compassion for people that have experienced that sort of thing. But I will repeat what Jesus said to his number one disciple, Simon Peter. And Simon Peter said, "Do I have to forgive 7 times? Do you have to forgive 7 times?" Peter said, "No, 70 times 7. That was an acknowledgement of how difficult it is to forgive a really serious crime. And I had some things done to me in this lifetime which really were beyond the pale. But at the end of the day, it was causing me so much grief to live with it and for it to stay within my being, like a flame under one's finger, continually burning you from the inside. That I had in the end to forgive it. And once I had, the flame died.
So you forgave that person?
I did. And it completely turned around the situation. And also, I think the other side of this is if you can forgive somebody for a horrendous crime, it may not work in all cases, but I think in the majority of cases it would act as a message to the person who had committed the crime. If they realise that, hey, this person has forgiven me for this, that it might start a process within that person of starting to acknowledge, the wrongs that they've done, and it might work as a sort of a healing mechanism within their being, and that's significant. So not only does the forgiveness help the person that's been there on the receiving end of the crime, but in forgiving them, I think you start to help to heal the person that committed the crime, or at least get them to acknowledge what they've done, and maybe, just maybe, they will turn a corner and stop doing it.
So this flame that's burning your heart and causing you pain and hurt and anger, it can't be that easy just to switch off, can it? Do you lead up to that moment where you find forgiveness? Or is it the act of horribleness happens and 5 minutes later you forgive them? Or is there a big chunk of time in between?
I think if you understand the process, if the process of forgiveness is something that you believe in, something that you totally acknowledge and accept as being a reality of life, a reality of spiritual life, then I think you can begin the process of forgiveness a lot quicker than somebody who thinks, I can't forgive that, that's too bad, it's terrible, there's no way I'm ever going to forgive that person. If that's your mindset, then that's going to take quite a lot of awakening within you, within your spirituality, to get to the point when you can do it. But once you accept, I think there are many examples, even some recent examples where people have had some terrible crimes committed against their families, and they've forgiven the perpetrators. Because that person was, say, a spiritual person. I can think of an example of a vicar that had something, I can't think of the name of the guy, but he was a Christian, and he was able to forgive the people that hurt a member of his family. So he was halfway there, in the sense that he believed in the concept, if you like, or he believed in the teaching of forgiveness that Jesus preached 2,000 years ago, and not just Jesus, but Buddha and all the other spiritual teachers, the great spiritual teachers. So I think everybody is capable of doing it.
So in your personal example, which you don't need to share with us, but in your personal example where you went from not forgiving them to forgiving them, did you literally feel different, feel better afterwards?
Oh, yeah, immensely. Because once you switch on the forgiveness switch, your life changes. And then suddenly you move out of the realm of fear and into love.
But perhaps with your example, does your relationship with that person go back to how it always was? Or do you, although you forgive them, you still don't want to have anything to do with them? What happens there with forgiveness?
You dissolve it. You dissolve the problem. It's a clean slate.
Okay.
It's gone. The burning of the finger has gone. The flame now is not a harsh hate flame. It's a warm, loving flame.
But you must be able to understand how a lot of people wouldn't be able to forgive.
I'm going to have to talk about one of the songs now, because I've got one song that really deals with this. A fundamental aspect of life on earth is that there is a polarity. We live in it's called the Polarity Integration Game. So we have, if you imagine you've got the light on this side, and you've got the dark on this side. One of the purposes of our spiritual evolution on Earth is to reach a point where we can understand the dark side and the light side, and understand the reason that they exist, and close the gap and reach a point of compassion where we understand the truth of life, the truth of existence, the truth of human relationships, the truth of our relationship to our Creator. And once you've reached that point of compassion, you really have won your Oscar in the game of life on Earth. So there are some people, based on what I've just said, there are some people who during the course of their different incarnations will play light roles and dark roles. Now, playing a dark role may be, if it's, let's say it's, well, you can play a dark role at a personal level, a dark role that relates to, say, a single person. So your darkness is there to create an awakening in somebody else. Or you could be, say, if you're a powerful leader, it may be your darkness is there to awaken a nation, or even awaken the world in what you do. And by the same token, if you're working for the light, that also can have an effect at a personal level, or potentially at a global level. Let's pick two examples. Gandhi in India. Now, what that man achieved is just incredible. I actually I wrote a whole dissertation on Gandhi in my book, Golden Age Economy. Because what he achieved, he followed Jesus' teachings. What he achieved was he got rid of the British Empire with all its power and all its wealth from India, and created a free India without fighting, without raising his hand in violence, and forcing these people who perhaps were not at such a high spiritual level that he was, not to fight. And he sometimes fighting did break out particularly between the Muslims and the Hindus. But then he went on hunger strike to stop it, and he almost died on twice in that process. But in the end, they did stop fighting. But he didn't accept the violence that the British Raj levelled against him and his followers. They took the beatings, but they didn't react. And so the British were defeated by his love and his kindness, and by turning the other cheek, in a way, by turning the other cheek. And his example was broadcast across the world, and it was the example that Jesus taught. So he was an immensely powerful voice for the light.
And a modern day voice, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, well, he was shot in 1947. But what he achieved in the time that he was on Earth was incredible, and he's a great hero of mine. If you haven't seen the movie Gandhi, I would strongly recommend that you watch it. Now let's take somebody on the other side. Let's take Adolf Hitler. Would be an example that everybody knows. what did Adolf Hitler do? He felt that it was perfectly okay to eliminate from the world those people, a certain race of people, and those people that were not perfect human beings, you know. He thought it was perfectly acceptable to erase them from the planet. And he truly believed in his mission to do that. Now, what did that teach us? Watching this happen, what did it teach us? I'm asking the question.
Well, I mean, it brought a lot of hate. And it still does bring a lot of hate. I mean, what he did was absolutely wrong. And his thought process was, you know, I mean, I don't personally know where it came from, but it was clearly deluded. But there was a lot of hate that came from that. And he was obviously, you know, his hate obviously came from somewhere.
Okay, yeah, it did come from. I mean, I've watched various films that have been made about Hitler. What happened to him during the First World War had a bearing on things, and certainly what happened, particularly what happened after the war ended, and the reparations that the French and the British put upon Germany to make them pay for the huge cost of the war. And that was effectively the beginning of the Second World War. That started it. And I think Hitler was very angry about these reparations, and it caused him to rise to power. That was his motivation, to restore Germany to its former glory. But the point I'm trying to get at is what did we all learn from Hitler's rise to power? Let's look at the Nuremberg trials, because this is what I'm thinking of. In Nuremberg, the one thing that came out from it was that the important thing that came out from it was that the fact that you followed an order was not an acceptable excuse to doing wrong. Mm. So just because it was, you know, the Fuhrer said, you know, murder a certain type of person or a certain race of people, it wasn't acceptable to do it. So that lesson was learnt by Nuremberg, and it was a lesson that I know it's been ignored since then by a lot of despotic leaders of countries, but it's nevertheless established the concept that following orders that are inhumane, or following orders that go against God's laws, is not acceptable. And if you do it, you will pay the karma. Mm. You know, a lot of Hitler's henchmen, they were hanged. You know, a lot of the guards in the camps, you know, they were hanged, men and women. So that was one aspect of a negative situation that created something that led to a good outcome. And we can probably spend hours talking about all the others, but that's just one example. Okay.
But they were punished after they did their hideous crime. They didn't stop and think, actually, you told me to do this, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, but the Nuremberg established a precedent, established the legal under international law that it is not acceptable.
Now.
After Nuremberg.
Yeah.
After Nuremberg. It went on for quite some time, didn't it, the trials? Yeah. So, in other words, something good came out of it for the future.
Yeah.
for the future.
Yeah,
That's one small example.
Yeah,
And
we've definitely learnt from it, but
Certainly.
there's no way we could not have, because whatever happened with Hitler and whatever he did was beyond anything. So we had to learn from it. We couldn't repeat that again. No one could.
But I would argue that there are things that have been done since Hitler that are far worse. I think his activities are right. 50 billion people died, but I can think of recent things that have happened that are worse. But I'm not going to go into them now. I just wanted to make the point that sometimes out of the pit of darkness, some good can come, because we learn a lesson from it.
Yeah.
As we learn lessons from good things that happen. And say, oh, okay, I can follow that example. Oh, I'm not going to follow that example. I'm going to follow that one, but I'm not going to follow that one.
Yeah. And
So in other words, the light and the dark do have a purpose and a function.
And change does need to happen continuously for everyone to grow, to get better, to jump out of the pits that that people are in, either in a group, in a community, in any aspect of life. You always have to, when something bad happens, you have to implement change.
And some of these people that play these dark roles, they actually had a contract before they incarnated, and their spiritual advisors and their guides said, well, you're going to play this dark role because this good is going to come out of it.
So almost, deliberately you're saying, be this bad person so that actually long-term good will happen.
Yes. Now that's something that's hard to get your head around. Now my song Dark Roles deals with that, and it says, we look at all these people, that hide in the shadows, and they commit all these nasty crimes. And I'm saying, why are they committing these crimes? And I'm putting the question out. And then in the song, I'm saying, at the end of the day, we have to forgive wrongdoing. We have to forgive it. Understand that some people are playing a dark role in order to help humanity, and that sounds very perverse, but in some ways, nobody's, Hitler actually, when he understand from various teachings that I've had about Hitler, because he's quite a significant person in modern history, but he would not accept that he did wrong when he went up to heaven. Eventually, he would not accept it, and so he said he would do it again. So he didn't learn his lesson. So he went to the second death.
Okay. How do you know that?
Various masters are in communication with us on Earth, and that was one of the factors that was transmitted to us down here through various spiritual groups that I used to be a member of.
Okay. And you believe that? I'm not criticising, I'm just asking.
But I mean, the records do exist. We have the Akashic records, where the lifetimes of everybody that's ever embodied upon this planet is all detailed. It's a file, in the filing cabinet.
Yeah.
The great library of life, which is accessible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are some,
I might Google him when I get in, actually, Hitler.
Well, the one interesting thing that I will say is that there have been certain movies made and certain documentaries that have been put out that say that Hitler didn't die in 1945 in the bunker, that he actually went to Argentina and lived into the 60s. But he went with all the SS. They all left and went to Argentina, most of them, and took all their great wealth with them that they'd stolen from the people that they had murdered. So that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, and Hitler is definitely a contentious subject, even now, and just, the connotation of Germany of those times still rings very painfully with a lot of people now, and so it should. And I think, the jokes are still sort of, out there, aren't they, about Germany and Germans and things like that. And that all comes from the Hitler times. But yeah, things have changed, things have moved on, thank God. And hopefully we've learned from it. So yes, and forgiveness, I think, for me is a massive conversation, different twists and turns, different meanings. Yes, in my work, I have my personal thoughts on it. I never condone anything that is very, very clearly wrong. What I like to do is understand the reason and the behaviours behind it, including maybe Hitler, although I've never Googled him. But yeah, forgiveness is a big subject, and one that we probably will talk about again.
I think it's probably, if you can get your head around that, if you can master forgiveness, you've pretty well much arrived. You've arrived.
Yeah. And I'm jealous. I'm jealous of people that have got that, because I'm not sure where or how I sit with that. But yeah, we'll explore that another time.
Sure. Interesting conversation.
Very interesting. Thank you, Kim.
Cheers.